On the dark night of August 8th, 1963, a Royal Mail train was speeding from Glasgow to London. Inside one of its carriages were bags packed with cash, worth nearly £67 million today, or around 800 crore rupees. At the controls was driver Jack Mills, pushing the engine through the pitch-black countryside. Then suddenly, at a lonely railway crossing, a red signal flashed. Something felt off. At that time, in that location, the signal turning red made absolutely no sense. Still, following protocol, Jack Mills hit the brakes and brought the train to a halt in the middle of nowhere. For a brief moment, there was complete silence. But hidden behind that silence was a carefully planned operation, a master plan that would soon become known as the greatest robbery of the century. This was the Great Train Robbery, the night a Royal Mail train was looted. At first glance, this sounds like the plot of a Hollywood movie. But this wasn't fiction, this was real life. A group of criminals pulled off one of the most daring heists in British history, stealing millions of pounds from a government-owned train, without firing a single bullet. The story began months earlier, when a handful of well-known London criminals gathered in secret to plan their next big move. At the center of it all was Bruce Reynolds, the mastermind behind the operation. Along with a small circle of trusted associates, he began designing a robbery unlike anything Britain had ever seen. Reynolds had one crucial advantage: inside information. This confidential intelligence came from a senior Royal Mail security officer whose identity was never revealed. What he disclosed was explosive. On the Glasgow to London route, there was a special carriage known as the High Value Package Coach, or HVP. On a specific day, that carriage would be carrying an exceptionally large amount of cash, and that was the target. Although Bruce Reynolds and his crew were experienced criminals, they had no experience robbing trains. So they brought in another London-based gang, experts in railway theft, known as the South Coast Raiders. Slowly, the team expanded. In the end, more than 15 men were involved in the plan. Their goal was clear: rob a government train without firing a single shot. But this wasn't a simple job. You couldn't just stop a train and loot it. This operation required months of meticulous planning. On the 7th of August, 1963, at exactly 6:50 p.m., the Royal Mail train departed Glasgow Central Station, bound for London Euston, where it was scheduled to arrive at 4 a.m. the following morning. The train consisted of 12 carriages, with 72 post office staff on board, whose job was to sort mail during the journey. This train was designed specifically for mail and parcel distribution. It didn't stop at stations. Instead, parcels were exchanged while the train was still moving. At each station, local postal workers hung mail bags on elevated racks along the platform. As the train slowed down, staff inside used long hooks to grab incoming bags, while outgoing mail was dropped onto the platform, all without the train ever stopping. Now, the carriage meant to be robbed wasn't attached yet. The HVP coach was safely parked at Nene Valley Railway Station. It was known as a high-value package coach because it carried large sums of cash, money sent via postal orders between cities. Back in 1960, the Post Office Investigation Branch had ordered that security alarm systems be installed in all HVP coaches. By 1961, 3 such carriages had been upgraded, and the older ones, without alarms, were placed in reserve. But on the day of the robbery, something crucial happened. The alarm-equipped HVP coaches were out of service. Instead, a reserve carriage, M30204, was selected. This coach had no security alarm at all. It was the most important tip of the entire operation, and it came straight from a Royal Mail insider. When the train arrived at Nene Valley, railway staff attached the HVP carriage directly behind the engine, second in line. And from that moment on, everything was set in motion. This was the first tip the robbers received. But the second tip was even more important. Under normal circumstances, an HVP carriage carried around 300,000 pounds. But because the previous week had been a bank holiday weekend, the amount on board that day had surged to nearly 3 million pounds in cash. That was tip number 2. A coincidence like this might happen once in several years. 12 times more money than usual, and at the same time, The alarm-equipped HVP carriage was out of service. But for the robbers, this wasn't coincidence at all. They had been planning for this exact day for months. The train, now complete with the HVP carriage, departed Nene Valley Station and continued its journey. Night had fallen. At the controls was 50-year-old driver Jack Mills, guiding the train swiftly toward London. Meanwhile, nearby, a group of robbers lay hidden in the bushes along the railway track, waiting. Their plan was flawless. At around 3 a.m. on August 8, 1963, one member of the gang moved into action at Sears Crossing. He tampered with the signal, covering the green light with a glove and powering the red light using a battery. Then they disappeared back into the darkness, waiting. When the train approached Sears Crossing, Jack Mills was stunned to see a red signal. Normally, trains, especially Royal Mail trains, were never stopped at this crossing. Still, Mills applied the brakes and brought the train to a halt, right at the signal. Suddenly, everything went quiet. The assistant driver, also known as the second man, climbed down from the engine to use the trackside telephone to contact the signalman. But when he lifted the receiver, he discovered the line had been cut, another part of the plan. As he turned back toward the engine, the robbers emerged from the bushes and overpowered him. Several gang members climbed onto the engine from both sides and tried to restrain Jack Mills. When Mills resisted, one of the robbers struck him on the head with an iron bar. He collapsed unconscious in the driver's seat. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. While chaos erupted in the engine, other members of the gang uncoupled the first two carriages, the engine and the HVP coach, from the rest of the train. Their plan was to move the train forward. But where? About 1 kilometer away, near Bordago Bridge, a truck was waiting. The robbers had even brought along a retired railway driver, whose job was to drive the train to the bridge. But when he saw the controls of the modern engine, he panicked. He had never operated this type of locomotive before. With no other option, the gang tried to revive Jack Mills and force him to drive the engine and two carriages forward. The train moved again, slowly, and stopped at Bordago Bridge, exactly 1 kilometer away. Meanwhile, the postal staff in the remaining carriages had no idea what was happening or why the train had stopped. At Bordago Bridge, the robbers broke open the doors of the HVP carriage and stormed inside. They assaulted the 5 staff members, tied them face down with ropes, and began the robbery. Inside the carriage were 128 bags of cash, filled with £1 notes, £5 notes, and 10-shilling bills. The total weight was nearly 2.5 tons. The train stood on the bridge. Below it, on the road, the truck waited. According to their plan, the robbers had just 15 minutes. They formed a human chain and passed the bags down one by one, loading 120 out of the 128 bags into the truck. The remaining 8 bags were left behind due to lack of time. The plan had worked almost perfectly, but in the end, one small mistake was made. A mistake that would later become the key to their capture. As they left, one of the robbers warned the tied-up staff, "Don't try to move for 30 minutes, or you'll be killed." The robbers loaded all the cash into an Austin Lodestar truck. They also had 2 Land Rovers, both fitted with the same number plate, DMG 757, to confuse any potential witnesses. Once the robbery was complete, the entire gang fled the scene. After a 45-minute drive, at around 4:30 a.m., they reached their hideout, located roughly 43 kilometers away, near the village of Oakley. Throughout the journey, they were listening in on police communications via VHF radio, which gave them a major advantage. At almost the same moment they arrived, the police finally became aware of the robbery. For now, the gang was euphoric. At the hideout, they celebrated, laughing, relaxing, even playing a game of Monopoly using real banknotes. But their joy was short-lived. Soon, they heard over the radio that police were searching for them within a 50-kilometer radius. That estimate came directly from a statement given by the postal staff, who had been threatened not to move for 30 minutes. Police knew that in half an hour, the robbers couldn't have traveled much farther than that. Hearing this, panic set in. The gang had originally planned to leave the hideout on Sunday, but they immediately moved their escape forward to Friday. On Thursday, They divided the stolen money among themselves. The total haul was around £2.5 million. According to some reports, each major member received roughly £150,000, an enormous amount in the 1960s, equivalent to millions of pounds today. The remaining money was distributed among helpers who had played smaller roles. Before leaving, they carefully wiped the hideout clean of fingerprints. One man was assigned a final task: burn the farmhouse down after everyone had left to destroy any remaining evidence. He took the money, but never set fire to the hideout. Meanwhile, police were conducting a massive search operation across the Buckinghamshire area. Helicopters circled overhead, patrol cars flooded the roads, and the national media erupted with the story. Police announced a £10,000 reward for information. That's when a neighbor of the hideout came forward, reporting unusual activity early on the morning of August 8th. Acting on suspicion, police immediately raided the hideout. It was Leather Slade Farmhouse, rented by the robbers just 3 months earlier. Inside, police found critical evidence linked directly to the robbery: empty mailbags, postal items, and even the truck hastily repainted yellow in an attempt to disguise it. The robbers had wiped away most of their fingerprints, but they missed one thing: the Monopoly board they had played with, using real cash, still carried clear fingerprints. Those fingerprints became a major breakthrough. Every single one of them matched existing criminal records in police and Scotland Yard databases. Within days, police arrested 14 out of the 16 suspects. Only 2 men escaped capture. One was the replacement train driver, whose real identity was never confirmed. The other was the Royal Mail senior security officer, whose inside information made the entire robbery possible. To this day, his identity remains unknown. He never revealed his name or face. The court declared this crime the greatest robbery of the century, sentencing most members of the gang to up to 30 years in prison. After the robbery, Bradegoe Bridge became permanently known as the Train Robbers Bridge, a name it still carries today. As for Jack Mills, the 58-year-old train driver, the head injury he suffered ended his career forever. 7 years later, he passed away, never fully recovering from the trauma.